End of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. Really, Ricoh, product Centric on display at its finest. Ladies and gentlemen, I read an article. It was an interview with a Ricoh executive. The article was published in the Canada Report. You know, I wasn't going to bring up the Canada Report. I decided, you know what, every time I bring up the Canada Report, I'm just driving people to that venue. And I'm thinking realistically what these folks are doing. And it's not just the Canada Report. I think you see this throughout the industry's media. I think what they're doing is they're trying to figure out what can we write about that'll just outrage Ray, and then he'll pull up our article and he'll give us some views. I mean, I think that's what they're thinking about. But I got to be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, I can't just talk about something without sharing with you where I got the information. I mean, that's one of the things I do, because there's a lot of old men out there that say I make stuff up. And I want to make sure that you know I'm not making this up. Because if I would just do this story without sharing that article, you would absolutely believe I made it up because it's so ridiculous. So, ladies and gentlemen, here's the article written by Scott Colt. It was an interview with a Ricoh executive. And I'm not going to read the article to you because it's just nutty. But I'll take some excerpts of it and you can go read it yourself. Why A3 technology is still relevant, right in the title of the article. Does anybody in the industry that sells print equipment to businesses believe that they can't get an A3 machine if they need one? I mean, I realize we had some issues with supply chains, but most of that's getting back to normal. I mean, do we really have to sell ourselves every day on why A3 is still relevant? Because I think if we have to sell ourselves on why A3 is relevant, it's probably not that relevant. Just my opinion. But I believe this article that was written on July 13th, it's not really about why A3 is relevant. This article that was written on July 13th is a distraction from the real story. Because it would have been nice if Ricoh would have addressed what are they going to do about A4. You see, we want to make it about why A3 is still relevant because Ricoh, and they're not the only OEM, gets their A4 from a company called Lexmark. And we all know that Lexmark's owners, 9-Star, were banned for bringing products into the U.S. supply chain, and we're going to have some issues around A4 products. So instead of addressing that reality with Ricoh, let's talk about why A3 is still relevant. I'm reading in this article, and we got an executive at Ricoh that's still trying to count people in the office and count people at home to try to define the future of work. The future of work is simple. People are going to work remote, and when they work remote, they're going to have processes that eliminate print and eliminate scanning. So they can do it all in a digital landscape. That's the reality, no matter how we talk about it as an industry to convince ourselves that we need A3 machines to scan stuff into the system so that people have it so they can work remote. That was actually in the article, and when I read that, I just laughed my ass off. Are you kidding me? We don't need MFPs to help people work remote. We need to help the people that work remote navigate in the digital landscape so they don't even need to scan or print. And by the way, if they do need to scan something occasionally, the remote worker, they could use their iPhone or smartphone to do it. Ladies and gentlemen, as I read this article, it was all about why A3 is important to the industry, important to the core deliverable of Ricoh, important to the core deliverable of dealers. What we're forgetting to talk about is the end users that use the products. Because they don't think A3 is that relevant. They don't think 11 by 17 paper is that relevant. And I'm convinced the reason this article was published was to distract the audience from the reality that Ricoh, along with other OEMs, is in trouble around A4. Ladies and gentlemen, this story's not going to go away just because our industry refuses to talk about it. The Wall Street Journal's friggin' talking about it. U.S. puts Chinese company with Kentucky ties on forced labor ban list. How long do you think it's going to be before Lexmark's included in this ban? This crazy shell game that 9-Star's playing is just a shell game. It's pure nonsense. And they're going to get caught at it. The distractions that Lexmark's throwing out there in the marketplace from the realities of their ownership, from the realities of their suppliers. Ladies and gentlemen, our industry needs to be discussing this. And the folks over at Canada had a great opportunity when they were interviewing that executive from Ricoh. But see, that's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. The executive from Ricoh wasn't going to talk about why they haven't made A4. The executive from Ricoh wasn't going to talk about how, even if we sell A3, the volumes produced on those A3s continue to decline. That Ricoh executive didn't really want to discuss the realities around DocuWare, their digital process platform. When they bought that company, the revenue was $60 million. I did an episode on it. And what did they get it up to? $150 million? If it's $150 million, ladies and gentlemen, that's 1% of Ricoh's revenue. The conversation that Ricoh needs to be having, and the conversation that all the OEMs need to be having, is what are we going to do about A4? And we all better make the assumption, because I think it'll be a pretty good bet, that Lexmark's not going to survive this. 9-Star, their owners, and 8 of their subsidiaries were banned from bringing products into our supply chain. And our industry trying to run around and try to figure out how to circumvent that is nuts. It's bad enough that 9-Star is doing it. But 9-Star is not going to be able to play the shell game much longer. And sooner or later, Lexmark's going to get held accountable. Lexmark's going to get dragged into this. You have to believe this, folks. So next time we interview the OEMs, let's ask them about their A4 strategies. Not just Ricoh, all of them. And if any OEM wants to come on the end of the day with Ray and talk about their strategy around A4, I'd love to have a conversation with you. But I'll tell you one thing we're sure as hell not going to talk about. Stuff that's irrelevant to those dealer friends of mine that are trying to navigate through its biggest disruption in history. And everybody watching me knows this. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and I'll see you all tomorrow.